Hey, Kimberly, great to see you again. So today we're talking about, ooh, this is going to be juicy, about the Bible and about religion and about how corruption isn't just in politics and it's not just in Hollywood, that corruption extends into absolutely everything on our planet, and that includes our religions as well. So before we talk, I think it's a good idea to put out the disclaimer that if you're super duper religious and you think that your way is the only way, this is a major trigger show. So just letting you know, you might get triggered up if you stick around. So Kimberly, let's talk about, we were talking about off camera. I mean, we talk about all these things, and then this is one that we had said a few days ago we really need to talk about. So
yes,
let's get on it.
Awesome. So do you want me to start? I mean, I would like to say actually my disclaimer that I'm going to start with, which is just so you all know, I'm wearing these two lovely crosses. One of them is a Camargue cross from the south of France, and the other one is a crucifix that I got from my mother-in-law who passed away from COVID a year and a half ago. I am a Christian. I consider myself a Christian, which is a follower of Christ. And Christian also means Christ-like. So if you're calling yourself a Christian and you're not doing, what is it, the WWJD, what would Jesus do? If you're not doing that daily, to me, you're not really a Christian, you're a hypocrite. I have a real issue with hypocrites. So I'm going to give you that disclaimer that people who are judgmental and do all the things that are against what Jesus was teaching and then turn around and say they're a Christian just because they believe in him. Believing in him doesn't make you a Christian. You got to walk the talk. If you're not walking the talk every day and being loving, kind, compassionate, forgiving, and doing all the things that he did, you really cannot label yourself a Christian. You can say you belong to the Christian religion, which we're about to talk about why it's bad. But being an actual Christian and going to a church or a religion are two totally different things. That's my disclaimer. So
I call that using his name in vain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so if you're someone who uses his name, mm-hmm. And the belief that you are embodying his spirit and then don't live your life the way he lived his life, it's using his name in vain. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of people who bear that name understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't call myself a Christian. I have been asked very, very clearly by God, by Spirit, to not label myself as anything. I am that I am. That allows me to be completely free from any labels.
I like that too. I mean, I say that too. I am that I am, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't do labels. I don't do boxes. I'm a free spirit. So
yeah, you definitely are.
Labels. So we've been talking about various things. So mm-hmm. maybe part of it is to one, in a way, to go back to the beginning. So we know that Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are all based on what is called Abrahamic religions. They all stem from Abraham. Mm-hmm. And then prior to that, one of the things that I let people know is if we go back to the beginning, like the book of Exodus, the beginning of Judeo-Christianity is the story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, right? Mm-hmm. So my understanding is that that's a parable. It's just a parable.
Yeah, it is a parable.
What happened on the planet before the creation of Abrahamic religions.
Yes.
And it's not 6,000 years ago. It's more like I don't know. When? I don't know.
It was 25,000 years ago when the fall of Atlantis happened.
Okay. So when we're in our last circumnavigation around the galaxy is when that mm-hmm. happened. That's when, so what I was being shown by Spirit is that's when fear came to the planet. Mm-hmm. And that prior to that, we lived in a beautiful paradise collectively, but in a 5D consciousness.
Mhm.
Then fear came to the planet. And as a collective of humanity, we moved out of the Garden of Peace into this lower vibration 3D reality that we've been in for the last 25,000 years. So spirit was showing me 11,000 years, but it's because that's when we hit the dark side of the galaxy.
Well, 11,000 is when the Draco showed up. That's when they showed up.
So that's when the collective of humanity. Now, on a spiritual level, what I was shown is that that our souls agreed to play. That's when contrast became part of the planet experience, and our collective of souls agreed to play this game in that contrast experience until, as a collective of souls, we agree for Earth to be a place of peace once again, which is where we are now arriving at. So I wanted to start with that because there are so many people out there that think that the Garden of Eden was the real deal. And I mean, I grew up believing that the planet was only 6,000 years old, and that there actually was an actual Garden of Eden, and there was Adam, and there was Eve, and all of that. And it was a parable for how we moved out of this 5D reality and dumped into this 3D reality we're in. And then we're now moving back up into that 5D consciousness. So you were talking yesterday about, and I hadn't even thought of this, about the story of Cain and Abel.
Yes. Yeah. So the story of Cain and Abel is just a story. The whole there was not a person named Eve and a person named Adam. And there's all of these Christians and Jews running around believing that that was an actual thing. There have always been beings living on this planet. ETs have been living on this planet billions of years. And during the time of Atlantis, that was the Garden of Eden because we were living in peace. And Cain and Abel is just an allegory to explain how the Canaanites, the cabal, began, how we fell from the grace of God. Humanity, or whatever you want to call it, the beings who lived on Earth fell from grace 25,000 years ago, because there was this Atlantean civilization. And what happened is Lucifer left heaven. He rebelled. He took a third of the angels with him. Where did they come to? They came to Earth. Why did they come to Earth? Because it was a beautiful paradise planet. Earth is like a gemstone in the galaxy. It's one of the most beautiful planets in all the galaxy. And so beings from all over space want to be here because it's so beautiful. And so they have the civilization that was fifth density. Everybody had 12-strand DNA. Everybody had their psychic powers. They could levitate and they could do all kinds of cool stuff. They had flying cars, they had all kinds of cool technologies. Lucifer showed up and then he teamed up with Satan, who's an ancient extraterrestrial, very evil, very evil. And they basically, with all their minions, they took the beings that lived here, and they brought fear, and they brought suffering, and they brought a deluge of horribleness that basically took down that entire civilization to the point where they nuked themselves. They wiped out the planet. They actually caused a cataclysm. And that was the fall. That was when everything separated out. And so the Canaanites are what you call the cabal, of course. They're what they call the Khazarian Jews,
Mm-hmm.
the bad, what they call the people that they call the Zionists or whatever,
Right.
all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people need to understand that Judaism split into two groups, good Jews and evil Jews. So there are good Jews and there are evil Jews. The whole thing during the World War II with Hitler and the Nazis was the bad ones trying to wipe out all the good ones. Okay, that was basically the evil ones who are part of the cabal, but trying to murder them all off.
I don't consider them Jewish. I think that's what people need to understand, because people are like, oh, you're being anti-Semitic. I'm like, no, they actually are not Jewish. They're Canaanite. There's a difference.
They're Canaanites. Yeah.
They deceive people into thinking that they're Jewish, but they're not.
They're not. No. And
the same last names doesn't mean they're Jewish. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Canaanite name comes from Cain, and it's just a story. There wasn't a person named Cain. And you have to think about this in a scientific, logical. Okay. So I'm going to speak to everybody's science brain here. Let's say you're living back however many thousands years ago that was, and there was only two people, Adam and Eve. And then in the Bible, it talks about they have these two sons. One son kills the other. Suddenly the other son is booted out of Eden, and he has to, he's kicked out and he goes somewhere. He marries and he has kids. Where did those other people come from? Think about that. So according, if you believe it word for word, the entire Bible contradicts itself. And this is my issue with the Bible, especially since I was a little girl. Even I knew there was something funky here because I was very intelligent. And the whole thing contradicts itself. So one minute they're saying the only people on earth, there's this Garden of Eden and God made the earth and he put these two people there. They had two sons. That's all they had. So what happened? Did one of the sons have sex with the mother? That's disgusting and vile. Like, the thought of that makes me want to barf. But do you know what I'm saying? You have to think about this from a logical a standpoint of if those were the two people. So it's because that isn't the real thing. It's an allegory. The entire Bible is a book of parables and allegories to teach you, as my BFF always says, don't be shitty. She said you can sum up the Bible into one sentence, which is don't be shitty. So in other words, the Bible is basically teaching you one story after another about how to be a good person. And they introduced it back then because everybody was unruly, society was unruly, and they wanted to control the population. And that's why they introduced the Bible. And I'm talking the Hebrew one and the Christian Bible, which we'll get into more depth because I know stuff that's going to blow people's minds.
Yeah, this might end up having to be like a weekly conversation or something because it's huge. And one of the reasons and I told you before that what Spirit was showing me about 10 years ago is that my role on the planet is to take on religion. And I haven't done that because it is so big. And so having other people in that mission with me is very helpful. And so, I love your perspective because it helps people to understand what, how religion has been used to divide and conquer humanity. So one of the things we were talking about yesterday is a story of, I'm kind of moving forward. Let's just kind of move through this a little bit. The Ark. That's another one that we were talking about yesterday, and how that's just another parable.
Yes.
And, So there was a flood at the end of the last ice age, right? Because all of the ice melted, and then we had a flood that's a result of the ice age. That's a normal part of the planet's cycles of warming up and cooling down. So there was that, but it didn't flood the entire planet.
It flooded parts of it, but not. Yeah.
And the idea that 2 of every animal on Earth made it onto the Ark except for unicorns, which I find hysterical. I don't know. So anyway, so give us. I don't want to own the entire conversation, so I would love you to talk about what we were talking about the Ark yesterday.
So the thing is, there's a lot of, I'm really into archaeology. I'm obsessed with archaeology. I have been since I was a kid. I'm kind of a frustrated archaeologist and historian, really into history. And if you watch all the shows with all the scientists that have been trying to discover what really happened back then, you've got two theories going on. You've got the scientists who don't believe in God, who are saying, there was a whole bunch of arks. There were lots of arks, and not just one. There was lots of them. There's those guys. And then there's the supernatural guys, or the sci-fi guys, who say that the ark was actually ET ships. Because what happened is not only did the earth flood, but the axis tilted at one point. The axis, flipped of the earth, the poles flipped or whatever. Right. So ETs, because think about this, there were penguins on that ship. If you had one ship that had 2 of all those animals, and you didn't have enough food because you're on there for 40 days or however many, long it was like 40 days or something like that. They wouldn't have had enough food for that many animals for 40 days back then. The animals would have all killed each other and gone crazy and haywire, killed and eaten each other and gone cannibal. So there's that. Okay. And that's the truth. That is the truth, that there was really an ark. That's logistically plus the fact that this ark was built in the African continent, right? Like somewhere on the African continent, and they had penguins and they had animals from all over the world. How did those animals magically show up there? Explain how penguins made it. Although, like, what about polar bears and other animals that lived all the way up in the Arctic, up in the North Pole? They somehow made it magically all the way down to Africa, and 2 of them happened to get on an ark. You have to use your brain. The problem I have with all these biblical stories is all of the people that just take that for its word and just believe it without even using their brain and having a mind for themselves and thinking these things through. It's not logistically possible for that to happen. That would be like saying, one day I magically showed up at a supermarket somewhere. I didn't have a car, but I just magically showed up at a supermarket. You can't, it's not possible. So you have to use your brain. And all of these stories, the stuff that they say, even if they had supernatural help, they're not possible. They're just not possible. I can tear apart and dismantle pretty much every Bible story that there ever was, and I can debunk them, like debunk every single one of them, to prove that what they are saying was totally enhanced and changed, and the stories were changed, because some of it is true history. There was a guy named Noah, and he did have a family, and he was a religious leader. But guess where Noah wound up? He wound up on a ship. He didn't wind up on an ark. He went up on a ship.
He went up on a different kind of ark.
Yeah, it was a different kind of ark. And that's true, because I've had several near-death experiences. And as a result, let's just say that my brain is filled with the truth of everything. Okay, let's just put it that way. I know the truth about everything. Okay. And the fact that I'm clairvoyant and clairaudient and all this stuff. And my boss is Yeshua. And he sets me straight on everything. He'll say, no, Kimberly, this is this, he teaches me. I learn from him. He tells me everything. So he's the one who taught me that demons were artificial intelligence created by Satan. Satan was an ancient extraterrestrial, and that Lucifer and Satan were 2 different guys. That was Christ who taught me that. I had no clue about it until he taught me.
I grew up being told they were all the devil and Satan and Lucifer and Beelzebub, that they were all the same character.
Nope, totally different people. And then there's also Caligastia, Baal, Moloch, Baphomet, who are pedophilia, child sacrifice gods that all of these Cabal people worship. That's who they worship. And they're all different beings. Every one of them are different.
Okay.
They're
okay. Yeah. So when Lucifer, I guess, would be the fallen angel, right?
Yeah, he's the one who was an angel in heaven.
The one that came here with all of his minions.
He came here with his minions,
and they did not have bodies. Now, one of the things that Spirit was explaining to me, and I do tap into Yeshua also, that this entity believes that God actually told him that this was his domain, that he came here with 1/3 of the host of heaven, and that the planet is his. He really honestly believes that.
Yeah, because he's a psychopath.
And
he's a sociopath.
So that's why it says in the Bible that God sent Lucifer and 1/3 of the hosts of heaven to earth. And that's one thing that I had real issues. I'm like, really? If he were a really loving God, why would he intentionally send a bully and all of his bullies to the playground to torment the other children? That does not sound to me like a very
no. He was.
Now I understand it. He did. God didn't send Lucifer and his 1/3 of the host of heaven here to give domain over planet Earth. He just took it. He's like, I like that planet, so we're all going to go there, whether God approves of it or not. And he really believes this is his domain, and he'll do whatever it takes to keep it as his domain. What I was being shown about a year ago is that he would rather destroy this planet and every life on it than to let it go, because it's his.
Well, and he already did that. So they pushed the reset button on this planet, I believe, like 6 previous times, where they either hit it with the meteor, or they flipped the poles, or they did something and wiped out all the creatures that were on the planet at the time and had to start over, except for the people who went underground. A lot of them went underground. And There's cities of beings in what's called Agartha, which is the center of the earth. Elena Denon talks. She has a whole video talking about Agartha, but there's beings that live inside the center. There's cities in there and stuff, kind of like Tolkien.
The light beings went underground.
Yeah, they went underground.
Under Mount Shasta too. There's all.
Yeah, well, it's not just there though. There's also Agartha, which is the Middle Earth. There's all kinds of of beings, and people think that elves and gnomes and all that are a fairy tale. I hate to break it to you, they're real, and fairies and all that. I have friends who photograph these things regularly. I mean, they're real. They don't live here because they're fifth dimensional beings. They're higher density or whatever. They're down below the earth surface and stuff. Yeah.
And they do, that's why kids can see them. Because
they're very open. They're very open
vibration, and then once they learn fear, their vibration lowers.
Yeah.
But children can see, they're called elementals. They're the elementals, and they were here before humanity was here. Are present. I mean, that's what the story of Lilith is, right? Lilith was the feminine energy on our planet, and those were all her beings, all those beautiful, wonderful, magical beings.
Yeah, they're the guardians of Gaia. They actually are like the protectors of Earth, and they're very attached to the Earth and to the consciousness and the energy here.
And they got enslaved too.
They were enslaved because everybody who lives on this planet was enslaved. So yeah.
So obviously they didn't go on the ark.
No.
So the ark story just makes more and more. It's funny to me. So another of the stories that we've talked about is Sodom and Gomorrah. That's another one. That's another mythical story, or that's manipulated to control humanity.
Yep. So it was actually destroyed by ETs, and it was actually destroyed with nuclear type of radiation. It was radiated, and that is why Lot's wife was told not to turn back and look, because it would have been blinding. So imagine if a nuclear bomb goes off and you're staring at it, your eyes would be blinded, right? So they told her not to look at it because of that, because it was, basically radioactive, and scientists have gone there and proven. They found I think what was a glass, or they found rock that was basically because everything was pulverized, it was heated up so hot that the only way that what happened there, with the land, the geology, if you're a geologist and you check out the rock and all the stuff around there, the only way that could have happened is if something from a really high intensity heat blew it up, basically. So a nuclear kind of reaction, a nuclear type of a thing. And so what Lot's wife died from is she basically died from radioactivity poisoning, nuclear, she just got sick and died from that. But they made up the story that if she turned around and looked, she would turn into a pillar of salt. She didn't turn into a pillar of salt, but she might have gotten sick and died. And you can read about this in Dolores Cannon's book, Jesus and the Essenes. That has a lot of the truth about the Bible in it. So there's a lot of the stories of the Bible that are set straight, not all of them, some of them, because the person or the being who was under, how do you want to say, hypnosis, who revealed that information, was going by what they were told by their people. But keep in mind that all these biblical stories were verbally passed down generation after generation, and they were changed until they actually put it in writing.
Right.
The stories had been already switched around a million times over.
Right.
So none of it is
the game of telephone, right?
Yeah.
So what the real story is, nobody really knows, because it's a game of telephone. The story gets passed down, and every person that tells it adds their own little understanding.
They add their own interesting story. Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
People say that God wrote the Bible, and no. There are stories in the Bible that were inspired by God, but they're written by men, and then they're translated. How many times are they translated?
Over and over and over again, and rewritten. Yeah.
Right. And rewritten. And then you had the Council of Nicaea that intentionally wrote stuff into the Bible to make it, I mean, that's when the Bible was actually created, right? The Bible didn't even exist before then.
Yeah.
That was created specifically for Um, the Catholic Church, the word Catholic actually means universal. So the Catholic Church was intentionally created by Constantine as a way, because he wanted to create a universal religion to control his entire empire. So it has bits and pieces in it from every part of his empire. That entire thing was created for the entire purpose of him setting himself up as the emperor of
the world, basically,
the first pope of his religion. And the Bible didn't exist before that. It was created specifically for Constantine's universal religion.
Yeah. So I want to point out several things here. So number one, the Hebrew, and you can read this in Jesus and the Essenes again by Dolores Cannon. But if you were to go back in a time machine back to the time of Israel, I was taught as a kid that the Hebrew Bible existed first, that there was this First Testament or Old Testament of the Bible that all the Jews followed, and then they added the new one in after the Council of Nicaea. That is a lie. If you go back in a time machine, you will find out that the Hebrew people and the Jewish people never ever had a book or a Bible. What they had was they had the scroll, they had the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they had all kinds of stories and allegories and parables written in scrolls, and they had the Torah, and they had the Pentateuch, and they had the, stuff like that, but the Talmud, but they did not have an Old Testament or Hebrew Bible. They never had a Bible. And so now what happened is, fast forward to the future, when Constantine went and wrote the first Bible, they took specific scrolls that they wanted. Not all of them. They left out the Book of Enoch and a whole bunch of other books. They left out the whole Apocrypha and all kinds of stuff. They basically they took bits and pieces of the Torah and of other things and put that into their Bible, and then they manipulated it and twisted all the language to not only control and manipulate humans. They put a code into the Bible, and they also used it as a template, to make humanity create mass destruction and all these problems we've had over the last 2,000 years. All the wars, all the horror on this planet was all caused by this. And how it was caused by this is these cabal, these reptilians, these Draco reptilians, who are basically the cabal, these ancient bloodlines. They wanted humans, how do I want to put this? They want humans to suffer. And they know that we have the ability to create with our mind. We have the ability to create. They do not have the ability to create. And so what do? They use us to create for them. They use us to create for them. And so the Bible is a predictive programming template that, if you imagine every person on earth who has read that thing over and over again for the last 2,000 years or whenever it was that they, wrote it up. Every time you're reading these stories and you're thinking it and you're believing it, whatever you believe is what you receive. That's what Christ taught. You are creating and manifesting those things to happen with your mind. So all of the code of the Bible, like there's all these books written about, the Bible code. Yeah, because they use gematria, they use their number system, which is why they changed Jesus's name. His name wasn't Jesus. If you look up, go to gematrix.org, you'll find out his name was Yeshua ben Joseph. They took the name and they made it Yesu first, Jesu, which is the same gematria as either Satan or Lucifer. And then Jesus is the same gematria as Satan and Lucifer. They purposely made his name that, so that every time every person praise and they say in Jesus' name, they're saying in Lucifer or Satan's name. So they basically are tricking all of humanity into praying to Lucifer and Satan. Because if you really want to pray powerfully to the right person, you would pray to Yeshua ben Joseph or the Christ. You'd say Christ, because he was the Christ. And so I call him Yeshua Christ. That's what I call him. But because his name was changed. And he came to me and told me this himself, and I didn't even know it. Like, I had no clue about any of this. Like, I've gotten red pilled over and over and over again over the years. My big red pill was when he explained to me about his name and how he said, that's not my name. It's never been my name. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then he explained it to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even believe what I was like hearing. And he is like, no, when I was born, they named me Yeshua well, actually it was Yeshua ben Pantera first, and then it was changed to Yeshua ben Joseph and ben Pantera, son of the panther, because his father, and this is another biblical lie, his mother was, his family was all Essenes. They were all the Essenes. All of his training came from the Essenes. All the things he was teaching, it was a combination of the Essene training and him going all over the world and studying with all the masters, like studying in Tibet, studying in, he went to Tibet, he went to India, he studied with the yogis, he learned how to levitate and walk on water. He went to the ancient Egyptian mystery schools in Egypt, and he learned how to turn one loaf of bread into 5 loaves of bread. And, he learned how to do all of these things.
Right. And he went to England too. He studied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been all over. He went all over the world, and he went to the rainforest. He went to, everywhere. The Mayan, empire. He went and studied with the Druids. I mean, he went everywhere. Came back, and all of the teachings he was teaching was a combination of what he had learned combined with the Essene teachings. That's what he was teaching. And the Essenes were the first Christians. They even had a cross that they wore, which represented salvation. And they were the first Christians. And their whole thing with the cup of wine, that was all perverted. He never ever took a glass of wine and said, drink this, it's my blood. He never picked a bread and said, eat this, it's my body.
No,
that
we talk about that.
It's a Luciferian ceremony. It's a Luciferian ritual. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And people don't understand that it's actually cannibalism. That's what they're doing on Sundays when they do that ritual. Is they're basically drinking the blood and eating the flesh of the baby, right? The Son of God. And they have no idea that was intentionally put in there. And that was put in there by Constantine to when he was creating this universal religion to appease the Canaanites, because that was part of their ritual. So he put it in there. The other thing that I was being shown when Yeshua was telling me how his name came about, what he was showing me is that it's a combination of Jupiter and Zeus. And because those were both the 2 primary gods of the Romans at that time, people wouldn't follow an ordinary man. They had to turn him into a demigod in order for the Romans to actually be able to follow him. So if they made him a demigod, half human, half man, half God, then that was an easy sell. And they combined Jupiter and Zeus to come up with his name. Mm-hmm. They have the gematria that came with it.
Yeah. The other thing about it is, he always told people, he said, men are like gods. And he used to say, you will do greater things than I. And people would fall at his feet. He'd pick them up and tell them to knock it off. Mm-hmm. Stop worshiping me. I'm not God. He would tell people he did not want a religion created in his name. He never asked for that. What he was here teaching every single person on earth how to connect with God. He wanted every single person on earth to connect with God, and that we are one with God. We're never separate from God, because all of these religions were created to separate us from God and put somebody as an intercessory in between you. You have a priest, or you have a rabbi, or you have an imam, or you have, a pope, or this or that, or a reverend, somebody interfering between your relationship with God. And he came here to teach us how to have a one-on-one relationship with Source. And they didn't like what he was teaching. And so they murdered him for that. And the whole story of him dying for our sins, that was all made up too. You're not born with sin, and babies are innocent and children are innocent until humanity, the adults, teach them how to be in fear and how to be mean and nasty and selfish. And when they start teaching them all these things, then maybe they're going to start doing what they call sin. But you're not born a sinner. These religions teach you all these wrong beliefs, like you're born a sinner. And that's because they would make money, lots of money off of that. Okay. The whole entire church was built off of collecting money for people's sins. Okay. Right. So basically, when you sinned, in order to get absolved of your sins, you had to give over land, food, property, money, whatever you had to give it to the church every single time to get absolved of your sins. Your firstborn, you had to give over them, whatever. sometimes they would take your kid and say, oh, we want your kid and we're going to put him in the priesthood, as because you sinned, whatever, when we know what they really did with that kid, which is disgusting. I'm not even going to go there. But that was also a thing too. They would take children and do nasty things, we'll absolve you with your sin. Give us one of your children,
Right.
so they can do terrible things with the children. So, but the whole thing of sinning, that whole concept was created to collect money. You have to atone for your sins. Now, there are people who do bad things. Okay. There's people who make bad choices. There's sociopaths who kill people, who are evil. I mean, there's people who are actually evil who do bad things. But that versus sinning, like they made everything into a sin. You call your mom the B word and it's a sin and you're going to hell. They made created this whole belief system that anytime you cross your eyes at your mom or something, you're going to hell. Every time you do this, you're going to hell. Every time you do that, all that is just being a human, and humans make good choices and bad choices. And we are held accountable for all of our choices, because when you die, and this, people who haven't been dead and come back don't know this, but when you die and you cross over, you get a life review, and they go over everything and they record all your thoughts. They record every thought in your head. Everything's recorded. Your thoughts, your experiences, everything you did, every deed you do. Every time you thought something heinous, it's recorded and it's played back for you like Memorex. Remember Memorex? It's not.
So it's not like there's a they that's recording it. So this is what spirits explained to me.
Yeah.
Thought is energy, right?
Yeah.
Everything we think, everything we do, everything is energy. So that energy is recorded, and I call it the cloud drive of the universe.
Yeah, it's called the Akash.
Understand. Yeah, so it's called the Akashic Records. I call it the cloud drive of the universe because it's terminology that people understand now that, it gets recorded in the cloud. That's what happens. It gets recorded in the cloud. So nothing is not recorded.
Right. And so the thing,
that's why we can do a life review after we transition out of physical form. We do a life review. And when the great thing is we don't have to die to do a life review. We can actually do it now. That came from my dad after he passed. He was like, do it now because it's a lot harder to do it after you die. So
yes,
that's your life now. So yeah. And the idea of sin, the word sin actually just means to miss the mark. All that is that we've made a mistake. And when you miss the mark, it actually comes from, like shooting arrows, right? If you shoot an arrow and you don't miss, and you miss the bullseye, you miss the mark. Then you can try again. That's all a mistake is a retake. We get endless numbers of retakes, but organized religion turned it into something that they could make money from, that they could pay penance, right? Like the word repentance, they could pay penance and then be repented of their sins. But it's all about greed. It's all about those organizations propagating themselves, right? In spirituality, that doesn't exist because repentance is an inside job. You don't have to pay anybody for it.
No, it isn't an inside job.
We learn from our mistakes. That's it.
Yeah. So the whole church, and the other thing to point out is Constantine was the first Antichrist. There have been several Antichrists, and this is what my boss explained to me. He said to me, the Antichrist isn't just one person. It's like a whole consciousness, a whole group of people, which is basically the cabal. They are the Antichrist, but it's specific representatives from that group that we call the cabal, or, whatever, or the Canaanites. There's or Khazarian Jews, as they call them, whatever it is they call them. There's certain representatives that have come forth from that group. The first one was Constantine. He was the first Antichrist. So what does Antichrist mean? Any person who is against Christ consciousness, and trying to manipulate everyone on the planet, and trying to control everyone on the planet, and trying to have power over everyone, and set themselves up as a demigod, which is what, Constantine did, basically set himself up as like a little despot or demigod or whatever you want to call it.
Made himself the first pope.
Yeah.
He set himself up as the king of his empire.
Yeah.
His physical empire and his spiritual empire. So, so I was getting that same message a couple of days ago, that he was the first Antichrist, and that there have been many. And this is what we were talking about before. So history repeats itself. right? It's that
Yes.
same story plays out
Repeats itself over and over.
and over again. And every time we go through this repeat of the same story, a new person is, and not even necessarily a person. Sometimes it's an entire entity, right?
It can be an entire group of people. Yeah.
And so people are looking for the one while they're bypassing that there have been many. Where we are now is that we're in a position where we can finally stop the cycle. When enough of us are aware that we're repeating the cycle, we get to stop the cycle.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So, other thing I wanted to point out was the wine thing, that they do in the church, the wine thing that they talk about in the Bible and all of that. So the Essenes would take a glass of wine and they would pass it around and say, this represents that we are all one blood. We are all connected. We are all children of God. It was a unity consciousness thing that they did to share. And when they broke bread, breaking bread was something that they did with everybody in society. When you had people over at your house, you broke bread with them. It had nothing to do with somebody's body. Okay. It had nothing to do with that. Breaking bread was just a tradition that when people come to your house, you break bread with them. Okay.
And we still do. Right?
Yeah.
People come to our house, we drink wine and we eat bread. It's part of creating a beautiful sense of brotherhood, if you will. I don't like using that term because obviously it doesn't discount women, obviously, but it does create this connection between people when we break bread together, when we eat together, when we, try not to have too much drink together, but we drink together. That's what that was, right? It's that beautiful connection that people have with each other when they sit and eat and drink together. It wasn't ever about when you drink this wine, think of, you're drinking my blood, and when you eat this bread, you're eating.
Yeah, that's so Luciferian. It's cannibalism, which is what they all do, just like all the celebs in Hollywood that are involved in the dark cult that have signed the blood contracts and they're doing adrenochrome and they're eating at their cannibal cafe that they have. They have a restaurant in Hollywood where they eat other humans, which are babies and children that they've been trafficking and adults that they've been trafficking, basically. And so it's
anybody's discounting if that restaurant is real or not. It actually is.
No, it's actually real. It is real. It exists.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go on their website and see, and you can go there.
The whole menu.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's the real deal. They have a cannibal cafe in Hollywood. All of the Hollywood elites go there and they eat human meat. It's what they live off of because they're reptilians, and they're disgusting. So, and because they worship Satan and Lucifer, and that's the kind of disgusting thing they do for their little, and Baphomet and Baal and Moloch and Caligastia, they worship all these, Baal, all these, transgender psychopath gods that they worship, it's just, yeah. And when I say transgender, those gods have female and male. They're like part half and half, which is why they take kids and they do surgeries on little kids to make them that way.
So they're not just transgender. They're also transhumans. So some of them are part animal, part human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're making chimeras like crazy is what they're doing. But, they do bestiality in that group. They do all kinds of There was recently some story I read about one of these famous guys that is getting jailed because he was having sex with his animals, with dogs. He was raping dogs. It's like they're sick. These are sick sociopathic, psychopathic human beings. And they're not even human. Some of them are reptoid. They're reptilian, posing as humans, or what we call shape-shifting as humans. But the ones that are humans are just total psychopaths. Anybody who would do such a thing, anybody who would harm a child is a psychopath. Anybody who would harm an animal like that is a psychopath. I mean, it's disgusting.
So I think what happens, because human beings are all born with love and light as the core essence of who we are. I think what happens with them, and this is what was being explained to me a couple of years ago, was that when they sign that contract, they sign a contract to sell their soul in exchange for fame and fortune. That actually is a real deal. I didn't think that was a real deal, but then
no, it is.
Specifically, And that when that happens, they basically lose their creativity because they lose their connection to source, right?
Mm-hmm.
They lose their creativity. That's why they have to keep bringing in new people, because they can't create. They have to keep bringing in new, young humans with their creative ideas, because once they sell their soul to the devil, they lose their ability to create.
Yes.
Because we are creators. Human beings are creators.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was being shown is that they basically become zombies. The spirit was showing me they become walking dead.
Well, they get walk-ins. A lot of them have actual demons that walked into them. They allowed that.
Yeah, they become the walking dead. And once they become the walking dead and they lose their core essence, their core human essence, and they lose that the loving consciousness that's a part of every human being. That's why they can do the horrible things they do, because they have actually lost what it is that makes them human. So they're really no longer human once they make that contract.
Yeah.
To sell their soul for their fame and fortune. They lose their humanity, that core, that inner compass that comes with being human.
Well, I also found out that in order to sign the contract and get all that, they also have to sacrifice something. And a lot of them sacrifice their firstborn children.
Right. They have to sacrifice another human. Yeah.
And it's usually their firstborn children they have to give up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they don't do that, then they have bad things happen to them. They get like harmed and stuff because they have to pay up. Yeah. Or they have all their money taken away, or something bad happens to them, because you see celebrities who suddenly are losing everything. Like they lost it. Like they had everything. Like I'm not going to I don't want to name any names, but there's some celebrities who, they had it all and then they lost it all. And that's because they weren't playing with Team Darkness. They tried to get away from Team Darkness. They didn't want to play their game. And so they have it all taken away from them. Everything's taken away. Yeah.
Well, and then sometimes they'll sacrifice one of their own. And I won't.
Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, he was a sacrifice.
What is a sacrifice?
What Spirit told me is they were sacrificing the golden calf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was predicted in The Simpsons or Family Guy or one of those shows like that, or American Dad, something like that. One of those 3 shows that predict everything that's happening. Those 3 it's pretty sure mostly American Dad and The Simpsons always showing all kinds of stuff, that are going to happen. Yeah.
They do their programming.
Yeah. And they showed him 2 years or something before it even happened. They showed him crashing in a helicopter and dying. Yeah. They showed that. It's all predictive. Everything that they're going to do to us, they put it into these cartoons and movies. And like Independence Day, that movie, they've been wanting to do a fake ET invasion for a long time. It's something that they want to do. So, yeah. Yeah.
And they're kind of planning it right now. I think that's why they started dripping images of ETs, right? Because we kind of public awareness in the last 6 months or so that the ETs are real. Yeah. So they might be planning, because they're always trying to find ways to keep us afraid.
Yeah.
So, and this is what I was telling you yesterday. I said they're continually terrorizing us.
Yeah. Well, we're their loosh, we're their food. We're all batteries. They drain us. They drain our fear energy, our suffering. That's why we have sickness on earth. God did not create sickness. Satan and Lucifer are the author of all sickness, all early death. When people had 12-strand DNA here on earth, they lived to be 500 to 1,000 years old. There was no sickness. And then Satan and Lucifer joined hands with the Draco. They altered the DNA of all the humans. They put us down to 2-strand. They made us live 70 years and get sick and suffer because they drain that energy. They live off of the loosh of every time you suffer, every time your body's in pain, every time you're sad, you're in grief. When you're in grief, when you lose your family members and they die and you have to bury them and you're suffering with all that grief, they're just sucking that energy like crazy. That is their loosh. That is their food that they feed off of. They feed off the fear, all of it. They feed off of.
So they have to constantly be telling us stories to keep us in fear. So, so let's go back to that again. Let's go back to like the book of Revelations, and that that human beings, because people have been reading that story for the last 2,000 years, are the ones we're actually the ones propagating the fear by continuing to read those stories and to continuing to look for the stories that were created to keep us in fear.
Looking for signs too. People keep looking for signs. Where are the signs that revelation's happening? Since I was a little girl, since I was like 5 years old, I've heard Christians around me talking about end times are here, end times, end times. And so people are propagating this fear over and over and over and over again. It's like, why does it have to be end times? Why can't it be beginning times, which is what the apocalypse is? It's the unveiling of the truth.
Right. That's what apocalypse means. People think it's the end of the world, and the world apocalypse means the great unveiling of all things once hidden.
Yeah, it's the Great Awakening is what it is. It's what we're going through right now.
Yeah. So, so people are looking at it like it's the end of the world, and we know the apocalypse is actually the Great Awakening.
Yeah, it's the end of something, all right.
Yeah.
It's the end of the eagle cabal cycle. It's the end of them. It's the end of them ruling the earth. They are being removed from our planet forever, and they will not be allowed back again. That's what it's the end of.
Yeah. Well, that's why they want to keep people afraid of it, because it's the end of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like you, I grew up in I call it a doomsday cult. And I grew up with that, with every end of the world story shoved down my throat. I had nightmares.
I did too. I did too.
Yeah. And even a couple of years ago when certain things would happen, like there was a blood moon a couple of years ago, and I went and I had a full-on PTSD panic attack because of all of this crap I was fed of as a kid.
Yeah.
To be afraid of. Yeah.
I was Catholic for most of my life, so a lot of fear there, and you go to church every single, what I do, the work I do, I'm a spiritual guide and life coach and healer and all that. And I have to do so much healing with people who used to be in the Catholic Church, who were told in other religions where every single Sunday they're told they're not worthy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're walking around with this, I'm not worthy. And then they're wondering why they don't have happy relationships, why they have crappy health, why they are broke and poor and epically failing in every aspect of their life. Well, they had somebody reinstill in their brain and brainwash them with this, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. So when you have that belief that you're not worthy, subconscious or conscious belief that you're not worthy, then what happens is your whole life is just crap, because you're manifesting, because with our thoughts, we are quickly manifesting. So what does that do? Why do they want you to feel not worthy? Because then you're going to suffer. And what happens when you suffer? They drain that energy and they feed off of you. So every time you're going into church on Sunday and you're participating in that Luciferian sacrifice ceremony, and they're telling you you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not that, you are embodying that. You are creating suffering in your life, and then they are draining you like a battery. You're being used as a battery. So you need to knock it off, knock off the crap. You are worthy. You are loved. You are perfect just the way you are. God loves you unconditionally just the way you are. You are worthy of everything. You are good enough. You don't have to prove yourself. You are good enough. Just be a good person. Just be a decent person. Just be loving, kind. Do what Christ taught. Be loving, kind, compassionate, forgiving. Be like Christ. Think in your mind, what would Jesus do? Seriously, and then do it. Because that is how you get out of being louche for them. If you don't want to be their louche, don't go into fear. Always have faith. What's the word faith mean? Faith and hope. You have to have faith and hope and strength and courage and all those positive aspects that God wants you to have. Your belief in him, that he has your back at all. He, she, God is it, I guess, has your back at all times, instead of I'm not worthy, because that is a wrong belief, and it will ruin your life, because you're manifesting right now really quickly. With the way the energy and the frequency is changed on this planet, the higher up we go, the quicker you manifest your thoughts. So every time you think, but I'm not worthy, guess what? Then you're not. And your whole life is going to be crap. Your whole life, you're going to fail in your business, your finances, your career, your relationships, your health, everything will fail if you go around with this, whether it's subconscious belief, which is that tape playing in the background, or you're conscious. And, I have this book, The Real Fountain of Youth. It's an intro to my peace stress management system. 95% of illness is caused by emotional stress. 95% of your life is run by your subconscious emotional stress. Your subconscious negative emotions run 95% of your life. Okay. So you have these little negative tapes playing in your back of your mind. I'm not good enough. I'm a sinner. You know, they made you believe you're a sinner. No, you're not a sinner. You're either a good person or you're an evil person. And you're evil if you're murdering, raping, pillaging, killing, dealing drugs, doing horrific things, stepping on people's backs to get ahead, cheating on your spouse repeatedly, you know, then maybe you're evil or you're a bad person. But if you're a normal average person who makes mistakes and makes bad choices from time to time, like, oh, I accidentally called my daughter the B word because we were yelling at each other, you know, that doesn't make me evil and it doesn't make me a sinner.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You
and
know,
you know what? That's one of the things that that belittlement and those messages of unworthiness, those were created intentionally to keep human beings from discovering their true potential. It's the same with money. People were told in the Bible, right, to be afraid of money, specifically to keep it out of the hands of ordinary people.
Yeah, money's the root of all evil, and it's not the root of
taught in our religions that cause us to feel. I call it fear disguised as love. So all this stuff that we've been taught in our religiosities that are actually fear are not from the light. They are not from the loving. They are from the darkness wanting to keep us small and keep us entrapped in fear and unworthiness and self-loathing and poverty and all of that. All of that is a lie.
Right. Well, look at Buddhism. Buddhism tells you to suffer.
Anything that pushes fear, anything that pushes fear is a lie. It is not of the light and it is not of the loving. And you know, you know, before we head out, we have a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of my books too. So I have a book called Own Your True Worth. That book is entirely about understanding where beliefs of unworthiness came from and how to transmute them. You know, and free your spirits like that too. It's about understanding how the role that fear plays and how to free our spirit from the confines of these fear-based beliefs. Actually, everything I teach is about recognizing fear-based beliefs and how to rise above them, because everything on this 3D reality, 3D matrix, right? It's all based in fear-based beliefs. It's nothing more than beliefs. And if we can recognize the fear-based beliefs, then we can rise above them. But right now, people don't even understand they're living in a fear-based reality because that's the reality that's been painted for us. And, you know, and all these religions teach that. Now, at the core of every religion, there's peace, there's love, there's harmony, there's true spiritual practices within the core of every religion. And that is spirituality. But it's all the dogma and all of the rules and all of the rituals and all that. Yes. That's all fear-based, and it's created to keep people separate from God.
And from each other, and cause all the wars. If you look back at all the wars that used to happen, they were over religions up until like the American Revolution and that kind of stuff. All the wars were all religious wars, and there's still religious wars. Look what's going on in countries all over the world where you have, I mean, even like Serbia, in the country of Serbia, where you had I think it was the Catholic Church that murdered all of the Muslims that were in that country. They were murdering them left and right, you know, Yugoslavia and all those kind of places like that. I mean, all over the world, there's religious wars still going, like to this day. You still have in China, you have the Chinese murdering all the Christians, all the Falun Gong, which are Falun Gong are Chinese people who practice the spiritual. They're very spiritual. They're the healthiest, most spiritual people in China. Them and the people who do Qigong, you know, the Qigong people, they're very spiritual, they're very healthy. And so they take them and they harvest their organs, they put them into work camps, they kill them, and they do the same to all the Christians and all the Muslims. There are so many millions of Muslims that they're taking in China and murdering them and putting them into camps. So there's still religious wars going on over religion. It's just insane. And so religions were created to tear us apart from each other and to separate us from God. That's why religions were created. There needs to be one world religion, and that is unconditional love, because that is the religion in heaven. When you are dead and you are gone and you are in heaven, there isn't Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist, blah, 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 blah. It's unconditional love. You're just bathed in the light of God 24/7. It doesn't end.
Right.
And that is the religion. The religion is your spiritual connection to source, creator. That is the religion.
Right.
And being a good person.
And it's not religion. It's just an individual connection to spirit. So the religions were created to basically sever that direct connection to spirit. So, that's what I was going to say. That war, to me, is the ultimate act of using God's name in vain. So you have a bunch of people who are out there saying, oh, I can't say the word God because it's using his name in vain. That's got nothing to do with it. Just saying the word God out of context isn't using God's name in vain. It's just saying it out of context. Using God's name is actually using God's name. And war is the ultimate act of using God's name in vain. When people use God's name as a justification for harm against humanity, that is using God's name in vain.
I agree, 100%.
And we got to be responsible for the choices we make, and we collectively have got to put an end to this ridiculousness of separation.
Right.
There's only one way to God, and it's through ourselves. Joel was trying to teach that. I know exactly what he said. He said on the Mount, he said, only through myself can I get to God. And so with each of you, he was trying to tell people that the only way to God was through themselves, and it got manipulated and turned into a religion that has basically become like a cancer on the body of humanity. Now, the light that's in it is beautiful. So it has still been a way of forwarding love and light, but it wasn't ever intended to take over the planet.
Nope.
And I think when people start to understand that they can have a direct connection to spirit outside of dogma, I got to tell you, when I discovered that for myself about 10 years ago, I was like, oh, the connection I have with God is so much richer and deeper and more meaningful and more loving and more peaceful than anything I could have ever found in any religion. And I think when people start to understand that they can have, that their connection to spirit is so much richer and more meaningful without religion, then those fear-based religions they'll cease to exist. I was shown that 10 years ago. They will cease to exist.
So what I was told, I asked him the other day, actually, I'm like, when is the truth about religion going to come out? So any of you who are watching this, who are going, these two ladies are crazy, I have news for you. He told me, and when I say he, the boss, Yeshua, he said, by 2023, the entire planet will know what Victoria and I are saying to you right now. So you can choose to either believe us now and start increasing your richness of your life and the beauty of your life and your connection to God now, like having a personal relationship with God now and listen to us. Or you can sit in your little fear porn little bubble and you can wait until you get it through the whole mainstream, whatever, to the whole planet. It's going to be broadcasted, to everybody over the coming next few years. Everybody, by 2023, everyone on earth will know the truth about all of this.
And here's the thing that's actually what my book Transcending Fear is about, was the process that Spirit gave me to process my life, and that in my own awakening. But what I know, this is 4D stuff, right? And we'll talk about 4D another time. That every person who wants to get to 5D has to go through 4D. And in 4D, we process our lives. And in 4D, we have to be willing to disbelieve everything we have ever believed in every area of our life. And so why not start now instead of putting it off for 2 more years of really figuring out how to process those fear-based beliefs? Because the more of us who do it, the more of us who go through this spiritual awakening and processing first, and have people like me who help people through that process, people like you who help people through that process. And there are a lot of other spiritual teachers that help people process their stories and their lives and create a more one-on-one connection with God. Do it now rather than having to do it with the rest of humanity and be in the shell shock of it. And if people do it now, they can help others through the process. Because that's how we do. We all help each other out. That's how we get to 5D collectively.
I am so glad that you said that just now, because I've been saying that to so many people this week that I was told back a couple years ago when the boss showed up and told me to get busy helping people. And he told me about this ascension that was happening. He explained to me that I can't do this by myself, that this is a team effort. And he said, from this point forward, Kimberly, everyone on earth has to come together and pull together as one human race. And we have to work together with each other, because he told me the only way that we will make it through all the grueling things that are coming for us in the coming years is we have to come together and we have to collaborate and work together in harmony and peace as a team. It's the only way it's gonna happen.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So hey, we do have to hop off.
I've got to go. I have
both have other places that we
another interview
needed to be about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So yes, let's set this up and do this again. We have so much to talk about, and
we do.
All of you who are watching, Kimberly and I are going to have more of these conversations, because we have information from Yeshua, from Spirit, from God, that really needs to get out there to help humanity through their awakening experience, because we don't arrive at ascension alone. It's up to all of us to do it together. And the more of us who do it, the faster it occurs. So I'm going to go and head off. I love you all. And bye. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody. Bye.